heroes and there are legends. Heroes come and go. Legends never die. We usually say that you cannot become a legend before death. These are living legends. If the legends fall silent, who will teach the children of our ways? Sun Coaches Podcast, Season 5, brought to you by Titan Sensor, is proud to present The Legends. Sun Coaches is proud to partner with Titan Sports for the next 4 seasons on Sun Coaches Podcast. Titan GPS delivers technological superiority and improved player performance through wearable GPS made for high school football and strength and conditioning. From speed training to athlete recruit to workload enhancement, Titan is the easy-to-use yet comprehensive GPS tool to get it done. There's no minimum to get started, and Titan will walk you through every step to success. Message us on X at Titan Sensor to learn more and get in touch. Welcome to Sun Coaches Podcast, Season 5, the Legend Series, and I've got a living legend with us today. He's still coaching. He's won over 220 games, a state championship, numerous region championships, one of the finest men in our business, Coach Frank Barden. Thanks for being on with me.
Thank you, Chris.
Well, Coach, I don't know anything about where you grew up or anything like that, and we always start off with asking guys, where'd you grow up?
Well, I was fortunate. I grew up in northeast Georgia. Actually, Hal and I grew up pretty close with Hal and Bobby and I. They were in Commerce, and I was up in Habersham, and went to Habersham Central and played for my senior year was for Rodney Walker, and that's kind of how I got attached with him. And, from there was fortunate enough to go to West Georgia and be a part of the 82 national championship team. And of course, Hal came in 83 and we played 1 year together. He was a freshman when I was a senior. And, then I actually went back to Habersham after I graduated from college and went back for 2 years to get married. I married my high school sweetheart, and we had 2 boys that are now coaching with Chip Walker down at Noonan, and, been very blessed, very blessed.
Well, Coach, when you were in high school, back in those days, and I don't mean to make it sound like you're 108, but you're an old
That's
head.
Right.
But,
That's right.
I ask people all the time, back in those days, did you play more than just football?
No doubt. You played every sport. I played football, basketball, and baseball. And if they didn't have basketball and you had to play hockey, you were going to play something, because really that back then you just didn't want to go home. And after school, you wanted to play with your friends. And that was the whole thing about high school sports, was the fun of playing with your friends and the things that it taught you. And, I wish we could get back to that a little bit, that kids would play for the fun of the game and the competition of the game. We were caught up in a little bit of NFL came down to college came down to high school, and almost we're in a free agency market sometimes.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I talked to Coach Teague the other day, and he was saying that we've gotten away from it's extracurricular.
Correct.
And it's supposed to add to the curriculum of what you can't get inside the classroom.
No doubt. It's supposed to teach you lessons that you can't learn in the school building, and you can't learn at home sometimes. It teaches you lessons that your mom and daddy can't teach you.
I agree 1,000%. So what position did you play in high school on the football field?
I was a quarterback, and, just a normal old guy, just battled and tried to work hard. And, Coach Walker came in and started something pretty good there at Habersham. And, it was fun playing for him. Then actually after I left that 2-year period, when I went back to work there, I went to work with him at Stevens County in the late 80s, mid 80s, when they had the Swilling kids.
Well, when we talked I've had Coach Finley on here, and I've had Craig Bennett, and they're a little behind you, but man, there's a pile of people that went to West Georgia that end up being football coaches.
You ain't kidding there. I mean, Keith Maloof just retired, and Tim Glanton, who was
I love Snake.
Yeah.
Snake's my guy.
Yeah, Tim Glanton, and he went on to coach at Kennesaw State, and there was a Mark Loudermilk. There was a lot of great guys that that coached and had some great coaches there as well that were a big influence on our lives.
So what was your first job? I know you said you went back to Habersham. Was that your first job out of college? And did you know when you were in, I'm sorry to interrupt you, did you know in college I'm going to be a football coach, or did you get in the wrong line or something?
No, that pretty much Coach Walker influenced me a lot. And I knew when I left high school, that's what I wanted to do. I love the game. I love the sports. I love working with young men. I think just like everybody probably has told you, to me, coaching's like kind of like ministry. It's a calling. And, that's the other thing I would say is, man, it's so rewarding, to do something that you enjoy. And so after I left Habersham, those 2 years, I went to work with Coach Walker. And then my first head job was at Pickens County, and stayed there 2 years and loved it. I loved Jasper. I loved living there. Had great kids, great people. Worked for a great principal, Steve Sewell, and then Cartersville opened up, and it's really a God thing that a guy from Pickens County goes to Cartersville, and I stayed at Cartersville 18 years, and that finished up my 30 as far as one of my 3 retirements. And but just been very blessed with great people and great coaches and great players.
So what was your early days as a coach like? I know, we always laugh about some of these young coaches these days are allergic to laundry and
no doubt and
pulling strings and stuff like that. Doubt. What was the first thing you coordinated? Was it a locker room or a broom or
well, the first thing I got told when I even went to Habersham, but at Stevens especially, go get your CDL because you're going to be driving that bus.
So you coordinated a bus.
That's right. You drive the bus to the pregame meal. You drive the bus to the JV games. And then, too, you coach 3 sports. And just like you played 3 sports in high school, you coached 3. And I coached football, basketball, baseball. And, you just did, and I'll say this, to do that back then, it took an awful good wife. It took a lady that knows what she's getting into when she marries you. And I'll be honest with you, over my whole career, I've always felt like that me and my wife did it together. It never was I did it because just like everybody else, the players know that the coach's wife, they called her Miss B, and they still call her and wish her happy birthday. In fact, they probably call her more than they call me. And it just takes an awfully good lady to marry a coach, especially back then, because you're coaching 3 sports and you're very rarely at home.
Amen. Isn't that the truth? I remember when I proposed to my wife and I said, "Listen, this is how this works, and if you're not prepared for this, we need to go ahead and."
That's right.
Figure that out now because we don't need to figure this out later.
That's right.
This is going to be rough.
Yeah, and those old coaches' wives will tell you, and they'll tell these young ones, you knew what you married into. You knew what his job, and the good ones will be a part of that job. It's not like, they're set out to the side. For us, it was a team thing, and I know for most of the guys that I know, that's the way it is.
And we couldn't have done it without them. There's
no doubt. No doubt.
And it's a blessing really to find one that can put up with our nonsense and our schedules and everything else.
Exactly.
And it's funny now, my wife works in the accounting business and I'm the parent from January to June, and then she's the parent from June to December.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. She's pulling double duty when you're coaching.
Absolutely. So, what was your specialty as a young coach? Were you an offensive guy? I guess since you played quarterback.
I was. A good story is that when Coach Walker hired me from Habersham to come down with him at Stevens, I had played for him, and we were very close. And of course, Chip was our second quarterback, maybe in a couple of years on down the road. So, a coach sometimes will, and I did it with my sons, but you'll hire somebody to kind of be the buffer between you as the head coach and my youngest was a quarterback, my oldest was an O lineman, and you have somebody to coach them. And so he hired me to come down and coach Chip eventually. But I told him, I said, I'll come down and coach quarterbacks, and I'll come down and, work on the offensive side. But I want to coach something on defense because I want to learn more about the game. And that was kind of his specialty, was defense. So I learned from a good one on the defensive side of the ball. And that was really what I wanted to do, because you got to know both sides of the ball to be a good coach on either side. And that was a huge, probably one of the best things that has happened to me, is being able to do that.
Well, I got a funny little big Coach Walker story for you that might tickle you a little bit. David Thrower, buddy of mine, was telling me that he's retired now, and he was at Mount Zion Carrollton at the end of his career, and he said he had Paul Feinbaum on, and he just had the sound on, and he heard Rodney from Georgia, go ahead. And he hears Coach Walker. He said, "Oh my God, Coach Walker's on the radio. What's he doing on the TV?" So he walks in there, and sure enough, he told me, he said, "When you talk to Chip, tell him to get his daddy off of the Feinbaum show."
I know. Yeah, he's on. He's got to do something to keep his time occupied. But that was a big blessing for me. And my years. It's funny because my years at Toccoa, and then of course I spent 18 years at Cartersville, and then when I retired, I actually got to go back to Toccoa. And so it's there's been some really, really, like I said, good people that you get to work with and come across and make some really good relationships.
Well, let's talk about Cartersville, since you spent most of your career there, and it was just what a great place. I used to tell people, I was always a South Georgia guy. But when I coached up in the West Metro area, and we lived near Villa Rica, and South Georgia guys would ask me what it was like up there. I said, well, I can tell you this. If it starts with a C, they're good. Yeah. Carrollton, Cedartown, Commerce, Cartersville, Calhoun, they're good. Yep.
No doubt. They're
what a great community.
Places. It is. And, like I said, that to spend 18 years at one place as a coach is amazing, but to get to raise your family in one spot, not to move them around, huge blessing. My kids started school there. They ended school there. They will always be a Purple Hurricane. And, those are the neat school systems. When you start in kindergarten, you're a Purple Hurricane all the way to your 12th grade. And man, what a great community. What great administration. I had some great superintendent, great principals, great support in the booster club. I once asked, when you go to a place like that, you say, people would say, well, Cartersville does this and they do that. And I'd say, well, who is Cartersville? What is Cartersville? And it's the people, it's the alumni. It's such a tight knit community. And, even back then it was a little bit smaller, and it's just, people take ownership of those schools. And when people take ownership of those schools, that's what makes them special.
Well, we were talking offline before we got started about, a lot of times people don't understand the struggles that you guys that have won a massive amount of games and won state championships, they don't know, they don't necessarily remember, the 2 years at Pickens.
That's right.
Or when you got to Cartersville and what you had to do to get it going.
No doubt. Coach, seriously. I mean, for me, it was a tremendously, like I said, one, just getting that job was a God thing, but what I went through and then turn around and have what we had, it kind of, what it does is you poke your chest out and think you're fixing to climb a ladder and you're going to go do all these things. And then, sometimes you got to get knocked down flat on your face and get reality check and say, look, buddy, this isn't why you're in this job. This is why you're in this job. And then, once you kind of get a better perspective of the profession of coaching and the impact it has outside of the scoreboard, that's the most important. And that's what happened to me. And it was incredible, what happened with my career there at Cartersville.
Well, I know that y'all won it in '99. How long
Yes.
were you there before y'all, won that state championship?
It was just 4 years. It was just 4 years. It was the fourth year, and first 2 years were a little tough, and we were like you said, we were in one of them regions with Carrollton, Cedartown, all them. I think we were in 11 team region, and 8 of them had won a state championship. And back then, you played 10-game region schedule, so it was a good region, and you go in there and you're 32 years old and you battle. And you learn a lot. Like I said, you think you got the tiger by the tail and you're going to do all these things. And, I think that's the way life works. Sometimes you got to get, and I heard Tom Brady even mention in today's game what he went through. And he goes, people have to go through that. You have to go through that to make yourself really, what you accomplished and to move forward. And so, it was the fourth year, and we had a kid named Ronnie Brown who played at Auburn and played for the Dolphins, and wonderful kid, wonderful young man, and obviously had a lot of other really good players around him. And it was special. It was very special.
Yeah, and I don't think, some of the younger coaches these days, they weren't around when there were some good teams back then that got left at home because only 2 got to go to the playoffs.
That's right. Because it was, and and even back in the 80s and 90s, you used to have region championships, and I remember even down in Valdosta and Lowndes and all them, they'd have like the top 4 teams, and only 1 comes out, and that's when they kind of started changing. Say, look, we got to get this thing where the good teams make it to the finals. But you're right. Like I said, 8 teams of that region, 8 schools had won a state championship, and just some, great coaches, great programs. And, like I said, the fun part is even back then, and when I was learning under Coach Walker and some of those guys, you learned how to try to outwork people. You learn how to try to run a program, with the right way and the right things, and working hard in the weight room, and it was I couldn't ask for a better time than what I had.
So when you got done at Cartersville and you got your years in, where did you go after that?
I retired and I went back to Stevens, and I did a 49% at Stevens. And in fact, I got a couple of players, got a player working for me right now that played for us. And, it was fun going back because I coached some of our players from that era in the 80s and 90s. I coached their sons, and that was fun. I got to, coach with some guys that you had been with for a long time. And really, when you reach that point, you're really not chasing a rabbit. That was probably the best thing, is after you get your 30, you want to develop a good product. You want to develop a winning program, but you're not chasing a rabbit that you're never going to catch. And there's a lot of rabbit chasing going on right now.
That's a good way, great way to put it. So how long were you at Stevens before you?
I went back there. I was there 4 years, and then I stopped doing that, and I got a call, and there was a private school in Atlanta, and I'd never done private school, so Paul Standard and Tim McFarland I called them first thing, and they gave me a lot of good advice on the private school route. And it was a small school in Alpharetta, St. Francis, and the intriguing thing was they said, we got a guy down here named Brandon Jacobs that has been running a travel team, a feeder, and that'll be your feeder. And I got to coach some really talented players that stayed with us through the 10th grade, and ended up 7 of them went to Milton and went to different places. And but they were really talented class. We had 12 guys in a sophomore class, and probably 7 of them were Power 5, and the other 5 went D1. So went to St. Francis, and then Hal took the athletic director job up at Christian Heritage, and where I'm at now in Dalton. And House called me and said, look, you want to come up here? And I said, heck yeah, we've always wanted to work together. And so I went up there and didn't know after 1 year he was going to go back to Calhoun and be the system-wide AD, which was a good move for him. But been really, honestly, to tell you the truth, I'm exactly where I need to be because I need to work on me and my whatever you want to call it, my why, my being true to yourself, whatever. But I really enjoy it here. We got good kids, we got good people, and you're kind of here for all the right reasons.
Yeah, you told me off air before we started that you got to share your testimony earlier today, and that was probably pretty awesome.
It is. I mean, and like I said, when you start, you feel like it's a calling, and now you're at the end, and you get to, to me, the more than the numbers and the records and the scoreboards and to me, it's the impact on kids. It's can you move a kid from middle school young boy to graduating young man, and it's just it's fulfilling to be able to do what I'm doing right now, and it's a lot of fun. And I got some great people around that hold me accountable. I need that more than anything, and and then I get to watch my two boys are down with Chip, like I said, at Noonan, and I tried to talk them in not going into coaching, but they did, and they love it, and it's in their blood, and that's what they want to do.
As long as they're happy. As
long as they're happy, and they're doing what they want to, they feel like they're called to do, and it's like I said, it's a career of many seasons, and one you look back on and say, man, that was a lot of fun and a lot of good people.
So let's go back and talk about, from a football coach's standpoint, at each one of your stops, you go into the new school. What was the first thing you knew you had to get established? Like, I got to get this right before we can do anything else as far as getting our program in place.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, first I'd tell you, there's a lot of learning on the move, right? I mean, when you're 32 years old, you don't know a whole lot. And so, there's a lot of learning and the just somebody says, well, I don't know if he's ready to be a head coach. Well, nobody's ever ready. They got to go through it. They got to put their feet to the fire, and they got to learn on the way. And, you learn from the people that you work for. Like I said, I've had some really good people that I've looked up to. But, some of the things that to me, you just want to do right by the kids, right by the community, right by the parents. And the older you get and you've had kids, you understand this is somebody's son. They have entrusted me being a coach or a role model or a leader, influencing their son. And so, the more you can see these kids as somebody's son and not, a player that's going to help you win games, then you get a different perspective on, wow, this is really important. So, putting the right people in front of them with a good staff, there's no question the good programs right now and the good programs back then had good coaches. They had good staffs. I mean, there's so many good coaches that may not ever have been a head coach, but they were awesome coaches. And, so good staff. Obviously, teams are built in the weight room. Teams are built in January through May in the weight room. There's no question. That's where you build your team. And so I think the weight room is most important because, it's just team building. And then two, it's for, safety. But weight room was important. And then, there's no magic scheme. A lot of people think, this is the magic offense or this is the magic defense. And we all go try, but there's no magic. It's playing good fundamental football, playing good ball and not beating yourself. And, we can all look and see that, even in our own personal life, when we go through failures, it's usually because of what we did or the mistake we made, not the other team. If you watch a game, a lot of teams don't beat a team. The other team most of the time beats themselves. And so that's the goal now for me is how good of fundamental sound football can we play?
Yeah, that was something that Coach Heron and you could tell Coach Franklin Stevens, had worked for him because they both said the same thing. They said, you got to learn how not to lose.
That's right.
Because it's a whole lot easier to lose a game than it is to win a game.
Exactly. No question. And that's a very important thing to learn.
And every one of them had a story. A lot of the guys I've talked to were like, I call them horror stories, but they're coaching horror stories where they're like, yeah, I remember my first year coaching, or it was within their first 5 years of coaching where they're like, yeah, we were winning by 3 touchdowns with 5 minutes to go and we ended up losing. And I'm like, holy smokes. They're like, I was a young coach. I made mistakes.
Coach, I could tell you a bunch of those stories and they're, but again, to me, the failures and those things are what make you. Those things are what you learn from, that make you better. They make you just better all around. And you got to go through them. Some people, sometimes our parents today, and we don't want our kids to fail. We don't want them, but they got to fail. By failing is how they get to where they need to be. And same thing as a coach. You got to go through it.
I preach on, brother, preach on. I tell my kids that. I'm a special ed co-teacher. I tell my kids that all the time. I'm like, y'all are so afraid to fail that you won't let it all hang out and just see what'll happen.
Correct.
I'm like, look, baby, I can't put my hands on you. I mean, I wouldn't do that anyway. I can't.
Correct.
I'm not going to holler and scream at you. That's not going to accomplish anything. I'm not going to make fun of you. The worst thing that's going to happen is you're not going to get a very good grade, and we can fix that. Don't be scared. Let's just see what happens. Just see what happens one time if you just cut it loose. But they're so scared to death because they haven't been allowed to fail.
They hadn't been allowed to fail, and they don't understand. And that's one of the things Coach Saban preached is the process, right? It's a process. And, that process isn't all about all the good things. That process has a lot of tough times and tough things. And, but it is going to get you to where you're supposed to be. And, that's right. I mean, too many people won't try because they're afraid to fail.
Yeah, my son, he's a autistic on the spectrum guy. He's got hearing aids, kind of funny looking kid, and he's a junior and plays on the golf team. And he ain't the best golfer on earth by any stretch of the imagination. I went out there with him today. He had a little problem at school today. He didn't respond in a way that he should have in the classroom. So we were out there on the golf course, and I said, son, you can't control the way things are around you, but you can control how you respond.
Exactly.
You reacted. Exactly. I don't want you to react. I want you to respond. And the golf course is the same way. You're going to have a bad shot or a bad hole. It's how you respond instead of react. And I think he understood. And that's why I got him into golf, because once you hit the ball, there's nothing you can do about it.
No. And I'll say this, no question. And I'll say this, one of the most fun parts of coaching is to watch these kids grow. I mean, there's no question for a young boy, male, from the 10th grade to the 11th grade is the maturing time. I mean, so it's so fun as a coach to understand as a 9th and 10th grader, this kid's going to make some dumb choices. He's going to make some mistakes.
He's a boy.
He's a boy, but watch him when he grows and the light starts clicking on and watch him when he gets to be a junior and a senior. And that's the most fun thing, is to watch a kid change. And the challenge is don't give up on him. No. Don't give up on him, because he's going to be fine. Everybody has got their own way of getting to the end result, and for these kids, you got to understand they're going to get there. You just got to be patient with them and love on them, and I was always taught from back when I was playing and back in the 80s, and coaches did it to me. I'm going to get my butt chewed. I'm going to get chewed out. But I promise you this, before I left that field house, that coach come up and put his arm around me and built me back up. And that was the fun part back in the days, the tearing down a little bit, breaking them down, but then you built them back up, and you didn't let them leave that field house without putting your arm around them and telling them, I love you and you're going to be okay. And that was fun. That was real fun.
And not giving up on the freshmen. I mean, good Lord, they're babies. You don't know what they're going to grow up to be. They could end up being an animal when they grow up. That's
exactly right. That's exactly right. And that light switch clicks on now. It does. And when it does, it's a really fun to watch that kid grow.
I told one of the kids the other day, he's a working kid. Like he's a construction type guy, and he does work-based learning. And I told him, I said, I'm really jealous of you. And he was like, of me? I work in concrete. And I said, yeah, but when you're done working, you get to point at what you did and say, look, I built a foundation, or I built this house. Right. I said, man, I don't get to see the result of my work until years down the road.
That's right.
Or when light comes on, like you said.
That's right. And and that's fun.
It really is. Well, what are some things about the game? You've been in it for a long, long time. What are some things about the game that's changed, not only from like a technology standpoint or X&O standpoint, but just the overall state of the game that's changed, good, bad, or indifferent?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, the good is the game changes. Especially scheme wise. I mean, back in the 80s, we were running the wishbone. A lot of these spread coaches used to be wing T coaches. I know Franklin Stevens, they were wing T, Jeff Herron, wing T. And if you evolve, that's a common process, is to go to the spread these days. And so it's fun watching that. Then you watch the defenses go from, your base forefront and your technique and you're this and you're that. Now they're everywhere. I mean, we got Kirby plays like a defense that there's athletes everywhere, and they're so well coached and they do such a great job. But, for that, I think for the negative is, do kids today, especially in high school, I don't know about college and pros, but today, do kids really get to learn from the game the lessons that the game has always taught? And that, to me, that's the big thing. You get knocked on your butt, and you got to get up. Your mama can't pick you up. Your daddy can't pick you up. You got to get yourself up, and you got to brush yourself off and go to the next play. And that's fun as far as the lessons that were taught back in the day. And, and two, I'll have to say, and being at Cartersville and like you said, the places that you mentioned, the community support and the tightness of a community, man, that's special. I mean, you can remember when those state championships were at home, and it's fun being in the dome. That's fun. But I don't think there's nothing like a state championship game being played in a town. That is so special. It's unbelievable.
I think that means a lot, especially to the smaller towns and things like that. It's just a big deal. And if you lose the coin toss, you lose the coin toss. Oh, well.
That's right. That's right.
But there ain't nothing like, can you imagine Bremen and Barden playing a state championship, and it's in Bremen or either one, or, when y'all host in Cartersville and you're playing, say you were playing Calhoun good Lord. There'd be nowhere to stand.
No,
you wouldn't be able to get in.
No, and that's when it was fun, and it's still fun, like I said. And the game is the game, and the kids are the kids. And people ask me all the time, what's different about the kids? And I say, really, the kids are the same. They want to be. Kids want structure and boundaries, and that's why football is a unique sport. It's one of the greatest team sports because it requires sacrifice. It requires commitment. It requires team. And not that the other sports don't, they do. But football is a really neat sport, and it's a really great sport to coach for a team concept.
My favorite question to ask in the Legend Series,
Mm-hmm.
Who are some of your favorite coaches that you coached against, built relationships with, whether they were whipping your tail or you were whipping their tail when you coached against over the years? Who were some guys that you just really enjoyed coaching against over the years?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of them. I mean, even back in the beginning, like I said, working for Coach Walker, but I remember we played Winderbear and Phil Jones. Phil Jones was such a class act. Love that man. And then you go on and play. My first region meeting at Cartersville in 1996 was, I sat in the room, like I said, there was 11 schools, 8 of them had won a state championship. I'm in a room I'm 32 years old, and there sits Ben Scott, Lynn Honeycutt, Frank Vohan, Birchfield, was at Cedartown, John Hill. I mean, it was crazy. And so I'm sitting in there with all them guys, but guys I've really enjoyed competing against and playing against. Hal and I had a really good time competing against each other. Rich McQuarter down at Charlton County, we had some really great games. Of course, Ray Van at Carrollton, we had some great games. And, there's just so many. And I really think that you build up some rivalries, but you really respected the job. It's fun to watch coaches and coaching staffs do a really good job and put a good product out in their program. That's fun to watch. You can tell the guys that are doing it right. And that was a lot of fun.
Well, and that's something I wish some of the younger coaches coming through will understand, and that they'll learn from listening to these talks and you guys talk, is that it's okay to stand on the 50-yard line before the game and hug on each other and love each other and love one another and go to clinics and hang out and have a good time. And then when they blow the whistle, try to kill each other. It's okay.
That's right.
And then still shake hands after the game and be friends again. It's okay. Because I don't see as much of that anymore.
No, and I think it starts with just a respect for the job that they're doing, and forget, like I said before, forget the numbers and forget the records and the scoreboard. The job they're doing with kids and what they're doing and the time they're putting in, and really and truly, I'll tell you something that it takes time to evolve, but really appreciate when Hal wins and be really joyful for him. And I now love to see people have success. I like to see, a lot of times, sometimes we as coaches get so, in a bubble, oh, it's all about us. And we think we got to do all this, but it's really more fun to honor and be there for people when they have success and have joy for them when they have, moments. Because I'll tell you this, and I've said it all the time, you better enjoy your moments in the sunshine, because you're not going to live there. You're not going to stay in the sunshine. So when you have them moments in the sunshine, enjoy them, but also respect and appreciate when other people have their moments in the sunshine.
Oh yeah, Chip said during his recording with me that when they won that first one, or when he stopped and just looked back and at the dome and just stared at the scoreboard, and they're like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Well, I might not ever come. We may never get to do this again. We better look back at it and enjoy it. You may never. I've never gotten to coach in that game. I've never made it to that. I've never made it to the semis, much less the finals as a coach. So I mean, it's special, and you're exactly right. Special. You got to enjoy it, and if you can't, enjoy it for your buddies. I've sat there on the sideline and loved watching, and you walk in, you're like, man, I hope Coach Barden and them can get this one, stuff like that. And it's just, it's just fun to do it,
Well, it's fun, and you appreciate it when it's people like Chip and they win the championships. But like I told you off the air, I am totally amazed at the people that, like you said, may not have ever made that game and may not have ever been at one of them programs where they had great talent or great but they coached their tail off, and they did it for the right reason, and they did it the right way. And to me, there's so many great coaches that are in that part of the world too, as well as just the ones that you say, oh, they have this number.
Oh, there's no telling how many Metro Atlanta guys that have to deal with the amount of nonsense that they have to deal with. That a South Georgia coach goes up there and you're like, wait a minute, we don't have a place to practice. We have to bus to practice. We have to bus to we don't have our own stadium. You know, we got to raise money for do what? I mean, it would be so foreign. And some of the stuff that, you know, in different areas of the state are so different that different people have to deal with. But the one thing that we all have in common is we all have the same job. We all are football coaches or baseball coaches or basketball coaches. There's only so many of us.
Yep. And we're all called to do it and to help get a person, a player, a young man from point A to point B.
Well, Coach, you have done a yeoman's job of getting it done, and you're still getting it done. How much longer are you going? Do you have a timeline, or are you just going to keep doing it till you?
I don't know what I would do if I retired. I wished I could build. I wished I could do carpentry or something, but I can't. And you can only play so much golf, and that's frustrating at times. So, you know, I love coaching, and you know, I tell the people here and wherever I would be, you know, anytime you want to go a different direction, just call me in the office and tell me, and I'll move on. But I got to have something to do. I love kids. I love people. I love being around good coaches. And this year in our region, we had some really good guys that did a really good job coaching and played some really good sound football. And, it was fun. It was a really fun region to coach in. So, you know, I got to have something to wake up the day to, and it gives me a lot of happiness to go out and be with people.
Yeah, Coach Charles Truitt told me he stayed retired for exactly 1 week and realized that his wife was going to make him work too much at home, so he went back to work.
No doubt. But it's a lot of fun.
Well, Coach, I do appreciate everything you've done for the profession, the class act. You've always been the example you've set for us coaches and the job that you continue to do to impact the lives of these young people, and I sure do appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us.
Well, I appreciate you asking, and I appreciate all that you're doing to better our sport, but not only that, better the coaches and the people that hear these. And it's an excellent job, and appreciate what you do.
Thanks so much, Coach.
Mm-hmm.